So we're live.
Let me refresh. We probably are.
Yeah.
Welcome to All Sides of Kennebec. I'm one of your hosts, Sean.
And this is Jeremy.
And tonight we have a pretty good show, we believe, in store. But I want to touch on a few bases before we jump into tonight's show. It looks like July is going to be an interesting month. I talked with Shelly Rudnicki, and she is going to be making a guest appearance at some point in July. So definitely stay tuned for that. I know it's a little ways out, but it definitely is going to be an interesting topic that she's going to be talking about. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. Tonight's guest is Alan. I'll let you say your last name because I will destroy it.
Sarvinas, Alan Sarvinas.
And you've been doing parents' rights advocate type stuff for a little while, if I gathered this correctly.
Yep, for a few years now. Around 2014 is when I started really looking into, kind of what was going on. My wife and I didn't really want to put our kid. We were having a kid, our second, and there was a lot of complaints coming from the community. So we, dove in and started networking with people trying to find out, root cause of issues. There was a group that started in Topsom, MSAD 75, called Parents for Liberty. I got to give a shout out to them.
Absolutely.
Without them, we wouldn't have had enough people to, get confidence to reach out to a parents' rights and education.
So what was the basis of starting the original starting of the group, I guess?
So we're in a neighborhood right across from the high school.
Okay.
And our kids played with another, other set of kids. There was probably 7 to 10 of them.
Okay.
And after they started entering late elementary school, grade school, there seemed to be a turning of, what some of the kids were talking about, what our kids were talking about. And then, the kind of topics would come up more relevant than they would with our kids. So we felt there was an influence in the schools that, that we didn't appreciate.
Sure. Makes sense.
Absolutely. So you guys started going to school board meetings, I take it?
Yep. There was communication. First, it was as soon as we started to initiate communication with the board, 2020.
So it was a polarized year. I'll tell you that much.
There.
Yeah.
So everything, because I really wanted to talk to them about curriculum and a lot of the money that's behind some of the curriculum. It has nice names. They talk great about it, but it is funded by a lot of taxpayers. Probably wouldn't appreciate the nonprofits and people funding those nonprofits who are going straight to curriculum and textbooks.
Right.
But then, of course, 2020 happened, and all most of these school boards decided they were going to assume power to throw testing into schools, throw masks on the schools, and whether you agree with it or not, I think that the point is parents' rights.
Yep, absolutely.
And when it comes to parents, and it's not just we advocate for parents' rights. Parents do have the right, and by law they have the right. So the state of Maine requires a parent to be a parent, right? If I was just reading it again over here, so this isn't a optional thing either. So.
I was going to say, I believe in the state of Maine, parents are technically responsible for their children until 25 with insurance matters for health, like covering health care and stuff like that, which is I found rather interesting because a lot of times you hear about kids moving out at I think it's 16 is the age that you can legally become emancipated in the state of Maine, I believe. But yeah, I found that those statistics and stuff kind of interesting. But yeah, definitely. I'll let you continue. I cut you off. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good. I want to say thanks for inviting me in here. And,
absolutely. I mean,
put the group out there. One of our main goals is to network. There's a lot of groups in Maine. We've reached out to RSU 5, 6, 10, Portland. There's a No Left Turn organization in Portland. They've been harassed to the point where they really don't use the name anymore.
Really? Are you mostly down south then?
Right now, correct.
Okay.
There is a I'm not sure they have a name yet, but in Hancock, there's a group of women that are doing relatively same thing. They meet at John Linehan's Constitutional Hall.
Oh, okay. I've probably seen them on there. I see videos and stuff on there at that hall.
Yeah,
I didn't know where
I've
that was,
seen
actually.
a couple things, but I've like I said, I've been diving a little bit deeper into this since I've been speaking with you.
I'm part of the dinner table pack, and I think they've done some stuff with I've seen on videos with some of the members that at that hall actually.
But yeah, looking at some of the things that you guys are looking to go after. One of them, by the looks here, is it's respect and restore parents' rights. Can you talk a little bit on a little bit of that? What you guys mean by that?
When we originally started engaging with the board, there definitely seemed to be a "this is new" type atmosphere. There doesn't seem to. There's no, in my opinion, we've advocated for the school parent group to actually start on the side and then provide feedback to the school board and allow self-govern to actually work.
Yep.
And that doesn't exist. And actually, the school policy or school law says that for Title IX, there should be this type of board, and it doesn't exist.
Okay.
So those are just kind of, small symptoms. You start getting into advocacy and you start figuring out what's what, and you don't see many lines of communication. Now, maybe there's lines between people that have been around for 20, 30 years, but
Right.
if you're a new parent, a new mother, you just moved in, anything, it seems that there should be more of an open platform for them to step forward
Yeah,
and
of
feel
course.
comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely seems to, if you felt a little bit of concern for even any of these topics that have been discussed over the last year, it feels like a lot of people were, I don't want to say shouted down, but silently ostracized in speaking up. There was that, I guess, the stigma of speaking up that ended up. I mean, we saw it with the FBI investigating parents.
Right, parents at a school board meeting
yeah,
and
absolutely. Did you guys run into any of that stuff going on with?
Specifically in MSAD 75, the board hasn't gone totally woke. I'll put it that way. And there are some good people on the board.
Okay.
So they had, and I think we were lucky in the chair that we had that had showed patience and understood that time frame was different. It wasn't just like any other time frame.
Right.
That you were actually impacting people's, kids' health one way or another. One side thought it was negative, the other side thought you were saving lives, but it didn't matter what side it was on. So there was a lot of, but they didn't get in. They didn't try to get, they didn't really touch on that. We actually just submitted I don't know if you want to call it official press release to the school board to pressure the Maine State Board to sever ties with the National School Board.
Oh.
Okay.
Because recently there was a whistleblower that came out from, I think, the Texas School Board saying that the state boards were contacted by National to get their feedback.
Oh, I think I remember.
Terrorists.
Yeah, I think I remember
And
seeing that a few months ago.
So, and they didn't push back. They actually were all for it. So we want to find out. Another group defending parents' rights. Oh shoot, what's that?
Well, but before we move on a little bit, I have a question to bring up on this topic. I saw that the people that were opponentizing against what you guys were standing for were stating that some of the issues that you guys were bringing forward are issues that don't even affect us here in Maine. Like some of them are like from Massachusetts or New York or like you were saying just now, Texas. How does that tie into Maine? That's one thing that I wanted to bring up and ask you, because I had a couple people ask about that.
I get that a lot, and it should be. It should be asked that, are you finding Maine issues? And we try to stay away from the whole, Fox News tag that you're like throwing on people.
Right.
But there are specific examples we've pulled out in terms of like an economics test or other curriculum that you can see that they've navigated to this more critical pedagogy type approach. So yes, we definitely try to. I'm not sure if you had a specific example.
No, I read it a few times in a couple articles how they brought up trying to tie it into Maine and how it doesn't affect us. But like one thing that we've kind of talked about here on the podcast is how bigger city politics tend to bleed over into smaller town politics. And I was just trying to make the connection of why we should be concerned about these topics that you're bringing up.
I think it happens, for one, is, the emergence explosion of social media and influence, and it's data collection, where a lot of times the point of getting your data is to influence you and sway you.
Right.
And some of it, I'll defend some of it by saying, when the parents see things, they don't want it to happen in their schools. So they should be allowed to ask, you see this here?
And that's
to allow this.
And that's why I brought up just a little while ago about how when some parents, even if say they weren't right or had the inclination to ask a question because something didn't feel right to them, and say they may have been wrong, they don't ask because they're afraid of getting shouted down or being ostracized or whatever the stigma might bleed over onto their child from, say, some teachers or someone in the administration takes it out. You know what I mean? It can have a snowball effect that can happen. So
yeah, I mean, we've had multiple parents say, "Can you speak to this? Because we don't want our kid targeted." Mm-hmm. And even if the kid's not being targeted, and let's say I'm not going to accuse anybody of targeting unless I have proof of it, but that is the emotion that's being felt.
Right.
So if that's the emotion being felt, obviously there should be some responsibility on the public side to come out and say that's not it, or show some olive tree saying, don't worry about, we'll take your questions as face value and we'll give you answers without, trying to
they'll make you feel like you're targeted.
Right.
Yeah.
And this was another thing that I found a little interesting that I thought could be beneficial to explaining your position, because I saw that you guys talk about opt-in policies. Explain what opt-in and opt-out policies are.
So right now throughout Maine, a lot of it is opt-out. They'll send waivers. You'll get waivers or a digital form in an email that allow you to opt out of certain things. And
so do you mean like field trips or like what they're learning?
I think it's more like it could be curriculum based.
Maybe a sex ed kind of video they're watching in fifth grade.
The Maine Department of Education just sponsored a comprehensive sex education event seminar that goes way beyond most people I talk to regarding it. Doesn't matter their politics. So when that comprehensive sex education is involved, it should be 100% opt-in. Okay. And it shouldn't be presented anywhere. And I want to extend on that if you opt in or you give permission for your child to go into a class to learn content, that content should stay in that class, and the content shouldn't be brought outside the class to recruit either, because we're seeing that too.
And talk a little bit more about what you mean by recruiting. Dive a little bit more into that.
In the state of Maine, the State Attorney General's office has a program called the Civil Rights Team Project, and they use the acronym CRTP, and I have their literature right here, and they have a CRT action plan.
Okay.
Now, CRT is something I've tried to stay away from saying because I don't want to be just in a polarizing how many clicks we get, but it's their literature and they're using it. And I pulled down the documents from this program, and it is a 100% pure action committee. And these are in almost 180 schools the last time I checked. And inside the literature, it tells the kids, one of the major bullet points is sexual orientation, and it tells the kids that they have to be ready to work. Actually, it tells the point of contact, do not recruit kids that aren't ready to work. And then it tells them to go out into the school and talk about this, and then recruit kids.
Oh, wow.
It talks about...
sounds sketchy.
It talks about interventionism, and not just in the school, but in the community. Mm-hmm. So I'm in the process of talking to, I don't want to say police, but local law enforcement, talking to them to say, this program is absolutely, provoking or asking kids to practice interventionism in the community. And that's just not a safe practice.
No. I think one example that we can use that I've noticed in like at a college level is they'll have political based field trips and they'll get like a course credit for going and protesting. That
I would be okay with because
but
it's an elective.
right. But I guess what I'm trying to say is they're taking that model and applying it to younger and younger kids. I think is what I'm
absolutely
trying to gear that.
Everything
towards,
that they've done in the campuses, they're now just rolling downhill. It looks
Right
like.
to the small to the
And the Civil Rights Team Project could be a very positive, beneficial asset to K through 12.
Yep.
But when you read it, they only have 4 bullet points, and there's
Oh.
more to civil rights than 4 bullet points.
Right.
And we've had a school
Absolutely.
board member on record saying, "Oh, well, you know, they go up and set up in front of the cafeteria to hand out literature and recruit." Now, I'm not, you know, but if you read what they're doing, it's an opt-in. So parents have to sign a paper saying, "Yes, you can do this extracurricular."
right.
So you can't then go to an extracurricular that your parents are opting you in and then go hand it out to kids who didn't get an opt-in.
Right.
And it does seem relatively new. So maybe this is just going beneath the radar and needs a little bit of rein in. You know, I'm not trying to destroy or, you know, ban anything, but that program definitely seems a little loose for.
Well, see, and another thing too that I've noticed with a lot of children, that one thing that we didn't have to deal with when we were younger is when stuff is being either polarized in school or there is some type of issue, even if it's a fight between 2 kids at school, they bring their phone home, so they don't ever actually have downtime from these situations. So there's no time to reflect on it. So it's constantly has that stress of being in their face.
Yeah, that bullying is like 24/7 instead of coming home.
Exactly.
And being able to unwind with your friends and family. Like everything that from school that day follows you either on TikTok or Instagram. Or, you know, whatever, Snapchat, whatever it ends up having to be.
And I do feel like as a parent, we like it does, like you see some of how videos bleed through into TikTok with school issues that probably shouldn't be geared towards some of the younger kids. But yeah, I mean, as a parent, you want your kid to be able to use what all the other kids are using. You want them to have that experience. So it's definitely a very hard issue when it comes to the social media aspect of
Especially if they don't, because if they don't have it, then they get even more ostracized
right.
from their peers.
Exactly. But yeah, so another thing that you guys were really big on was American curriculums. You guys want to make sure that the curriculum of America is being taught to our kids, the core basis. What do you guys feel the core bases are?
I take it from the point of view as there's a lot of rhetoric right now about not liking America, the basics. But if you drill down or talk to them, they don't really know anything about the Constitution or how it was developed from really a century before of prior self-governing pushes. From the treaty, I can't remember right now. So it wasn't just a flash in a moment. There's a 27th charge of King George that kind of got dropped, but if you read it, it was very evident that the founders were laying the normalization of slavery at King George's feet. So it was very evident from the beginning they know it was wrong.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, but you at least got to know the basics of civics before you can say it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
I think the same is true with capitalism, that it's easy to hate on something. It's easy to demonize something if you don't understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they don't teach
kids
capitalism in schools.
And if
No,
you teach kids
they don't.
If you teach kids to not like your country, and after the generation turns over, your country's going to be going downhill. And I think we're starting to see.
Well, I think too a lot of people are bringing in a lot of the baggage that comes with politics and with some teachers. I'm not saying all of them do it, but there is a lot of politics that are bleeding into the schools,
right.
Especially these last few years.
Well, plus they're focusing on like the 1619 project.
Yeah. But
as a founding of.
Yeah, I think some of that can go back to social media too. That we're all, everybody's plugged in. So
Yeah.
walking into a school and then you're supposed to unplug when you're getting 5 notifications about
Right.
CNN and Fox News or wherever you can.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. We expect our kids to do it, but the teachers can't even do it half the time.
no, I mean a lot. It seems like, all of it, not all, but government to society, we're almost chasing technology instead of using it.
It's
and
that
putting some-
dopamine effect.
right, exactly. I mean,
kids
I'm
can't-
guilty of it myself. So
Yeah,
And I
well, me
think
too.
there's symptoms showing that the kids are having a hard time.
well, here's something you can do to see if you are falling into this category of the electronics. There's a part in Facebook that breaks down what your usage is, and go check that out. It's you'll be amazed at how many times you open your Facebook in a day or within a week. So yeah, I'm always trying to half my number, but it doesn't always work. But yeah, I try to keep a proactive thought towards it though. So
And that's kind of basically what you have to do is just recognize that
yeah,
you're probably using it way too much.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
you can cut back a little bit. Everything in
and-
moderation.
Yeah.
And I find myself making the excuse, oh, I'm just checking the time. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
I mean, I normally have a smartwatch.
Right.
Mine's charging right now, but that's what I'm checking the time for.
Yeah, so
The rest of the time, it's all just I'm looking at TikToks or I'm looking at my work email
Yeah.
or Facebook. We run multiple companies, so
yeah,
You also-
Facebook's
If real quick, you touched on, you didn't want to say all teachers do, whatever we were talking about. There's a ton of great teachers,
Yeah.
but we're also seeing a lot of resignations, and we're also seeing schools that
That's-
can't fill positions. And I don't believe it's because there's not enough teachers. I think there's
something wrong in the administration.
there's an uncomfortable environment that is outside their generation that they don't want to teach.
Well, I mean, if you have somebody that's breathing over your shoulder all the time, I would imagine it would get daunting after a while. I mean, I'm not a teacher, so I can only speak from what I've seen.
And there's a lot of data extraction, data use, software, and if you
That's-
didn't grow up in a certain generation.
you
then
have a
that's
hard
gonna-
time using that.
Yep, and you're pressured into using it and training and training and training, and it's so foreign to anyone over 50 that, I feel for them. So that sometimes
Yeah.
we may just take a step back and let, we have Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey. This country did pretty great without shoving computers in kids' face all the time.
Yep.
So we don't have to go down that, so fast. Because one of the budget items was more technology in the classroom. And when I was sitting there, I'm like, good gracious, like,
How much more do you need?
well, you were
Right.
just telling us that you were training teachers on this software.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to finish
Finished, yeah,
finish this
exactly.
before we have more. And
Yeah.
I think that's pretty common around the state.
Yeah, it is. I deal with electronics, and like every time you look, it's new iPads or new Chromebooks or
Right.
MacBooks, and because it's all through Apple, they get special pricing, so it incentivizes them to buy more.
Yeah, that's the outside influence that I think.
The lobbying. There's a lot of
Lobbying.
nonprofits in the lobbying. We just had I think it was Main Source of Truth, just released snapshots of a FOIA that showed that these nonprofits and lobbyists are actually submitting FOIAs for teacher and administrative identification, so they can contact them and lobby them.
Oh wow, that's
It was actually
that's a little sketchy.
It was actually a different subject in which the FOIA was, but that was the response. We're getting so many FOIAs, and one of the bullets was this. And I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
So you're using FOIA to find
Info.
customers?
Yeah, and
That's not what it was meant for.
It's not really along
Yeah.
the lines of
It doesn't sound ethical.
and like you were saying too, a lot of the data collection. I mean, our kids use these laptops, and I mean, some
Google Classroom. Everyone's got it.
and it's not for free. Google's
No.
not supplying stuff for free.
So I mean, just the idea of them taking your kids' info, it feels sketchy to me. I don't know.
I think one of the
But-
privacy protection is definitely, data isn't, the gay data is the new gold, or however you want to.
Yeah.
It's for a reason. So, I think parents should look into it a little and protect that data. Whether it's
Absolutely.
to
Right, 'cause they're
whether
not
it's to
old enough
monetize
to-
it later or not.
You're not old enough to
Well,
consent.
that's what it is. I mean, once something's there, it's there.
Right, you can't.
And I don't know how many times I've seen it over the last, I don't know, since last 5 years of kids doing something at school. Well, not doing it at school, but something at home in the community. The picture was taken, and then I don't know, whatever the picture is, the kids start picking on them for it, and it doesn't ever go away. And it's just, once it's there, and then trying to help them work through it. That's a new role for parents too. It's definitely uncharted territory.
Everything is new. We didn't have this much technology when we were in school.
No, and
we're all just winging it.
Absolutely.
I was just reading some of the statute on the way over in case you wanted to know like specific statute, but the data in terms of extraction is wide open. We're talking about mobility between school administrations. That's one of the things it says. So it's extracting data from everybody all the time, and they're allowed to use it for ads, and unless you're say no. So
see, that's another thing too. Is you're, say you give your child a cell phone. They go to school, their tablet or Chromebook or whatever communicates with that device, and like you just said, they sell the ads. So now the next thing you know, your kid's being pressured with ads to buy stuff. So they're, you see the stress that it can cause.
Yeah, I don't realistically
targeting.
believe that it's happening on a Wi-Fi level at like a school like that. But
I don't know, man. I mean,
I'd be more worried about my kids seeing stuff on TikTok and
getting
ads for
was
that.
under investigation, right? Was TikTok or Instagram under investigation for targeting girls?
Oh
there's been a lot of
that was a while ago when that came out. Right?
Yeah,
I think a couple months ago.
It's been a little while, but so another one here is viewpoint discrimination. Dive a little bit into that.
There's in my experience, there's an echo chamber inside maybe not Department of Education. At least there's one. Students do not feel as if they're if they want to support a certain candidate that's not very popular in social media, then they're not going to talk about it.
Right.
It really it starts at the campuses have become incredibly bad. It's hard to get sponsored as a conservative from another professor.
Yep.
But 60 years ago, they tried to burn down Berkeley for not allowing a non-heterosexual speak, and everybody agreed with that. Right. So now we're on the other side of the spectrum, but people like myself feel the same way.
Right. People like the extremes. They go from one extreme to the next.
Yep. Let them speak and stop trying to oppress people. And now it just seems like we've swung all the way to the other end, and now it's time to reel it back in. Right. Check balance. It works pretty well if you use it as a
tool.
A tool.
Yeah. Definitely. And last one on this one that I read into, school choice is a big thing. A lot of parents have been talking about this. I know Trump was really big on school choice. Conservatives seem to like school choice. How do you feel about school choice? And yeah, so
the school choice, in the end, is a tide that rises all boats. Is a common phrase with it, because it adds competition to the public education,
the marketplace,
and the public education will correct itself if there's a competition taking students away. Because right now they're losing thousands and thousands of students. It's not just a couple. There's no growth. There's barely any growth in Maine. So when kids leave the school, it is hurting them. And taxpayers have a right to have their money follow the kid. And whenever a charter school opens up, it's filled within a day, because there's all kinds of sign-up lists.
Right.
Who if you're a teacher, your kids go there. I think overall, half the teachers in the country send their kids to private schools. So, there's obviously a precedent for it, and school choice allows, opens up opens up to competition, the market, adds more of the free market side, and it'll just, it'll benefit everybody. And a lot of the exit polling shows that it's definitely a bipartisan. It's not really an issue. It's more of a, bipartisan, we want this, so give it to us and, stop protecting the public union.
So how do you think that would work in regards to paying for it? Like how would in your world, because you're a 501c3, right?
Yep.
So you guys are nonprofit, so you guys advocate for certain things. So what would you advocate for in regards to how you'd like to see the school choice being paid for?
Well, right now the taxpayers' money follows the kid to the school.
Right,
And
and
then
you can't take it out.
And
if they don't go there,
so
then,
if you pull your kid out, the money doesn't stay with the school. It goes back to the Department of Education or this general fund.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to see it going back to a general fund. I don't even like hearing the word general and fund together.
Right.
So it needs to just
Slush fund.
It could be a grant to a school if they still want to maintain some kind of control, because I know that's hard to let go of. It can still have and as much as technology's opened up logistics, you could select your school and have the funds applied electronically. It doesn't have to be a check or distribution of cash or anything like that. So I think there's a relative easy way to do it without adding too much fiscal, cost on the
I think it's just a matter of getting the spine to actually have it happen.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a lot of if you want to use Florida, when DeSantis first won, the exit polling showed school choice was huge, and that was a lot of Democrats. That wasn't Republicans.
Right.
So that's why it's really and the pushback against it is going to be mostly the public unions. I mean, the unions are hated, and they're very powerful, if not the most powerful in this state. So we need legislatures to understand what bipartisan means and tell the public unions they're not going to win on this one, and let people have what they pay for.
Definitely. And moving forward into the future, where do you want to see this grow?
So right now, like I said, we've talked to RSU 5, 6, 10, Hancock, Portland, and we want to make sure we have a presence for when there's legislation put on the table and there is bipartisan support, so they know that there are people on the ground that want it, and that a lot of times you have legislators that want to do something but don't feel like they have support, and we want to be that support for them. Also, we want to help school board. We want to advocate for school board races for parents in the community, and not so much teachers from the districts or other state officials who, I believe are a conflict being on the board.
Yeah, I saw there was a little bit of an argument. So you don't think teachers should be on the school board?
No, I don't.
Okay, so let's dive into a little bit of this, because I find this a little bit. I understand what you mean by the conflicts of interest. Let's dive into a little bit of how this could play out and why you disagree with it.
So one of the common, statements back is, wouldn't you want doctors on a hospital board? Well, they're not. Not all hospital boards have doctors on them, because the board, as its function, needs autonomy from the day-to-day decisions on the ground. Nothing is free. The budget has to be considered from, we say kids first, then the community, and we need representation as much as the state and the school, the teacher unions. So when you go having, teachers, let's say retired teachers pulling pensions from the same union they just left, or you have union affiliated members on the board just in a different district, that conflict is going to be natural, right? That's why the law says appearance of conflict, because it's not, it's their issue to not appear as to be a conflict. If it appears to be a conflict, then it's already violated.
Right.
Right. It's and it seems, following the track, that a lot of these issues boiling up are after these school boards get more towards, with people that have been in the union or work in the state in a different district.
Yeah.
The unions are strong. I mean, the teachers' unions have a lot
Absolutely.
of backing, and they should. Teachers are so.
See,
this is how the
that's
conversation goes into to beating on teachers, but that's not the case.
Well, see, teachers' unions is kind of a tricky word, because it really doesn't have anything to do with the teachers. It's the administration. So.
Well, they also have a lot. They help.
I'm not saying they don't
negotiate.
I'm not saying they don't,
rates that the
but
teachers get paid and what they have.
But the administration, everything seems to be geared towards the administration, not towards. You know what I mean? It's not, it should be more geared towards the teachers, towards the kids. But it feels like the administration is always wanting to grow.
I think, to be honest with you, I think it goes back to check and balance.
Oh, absolutely.
And the school board needs to be the balance to the union
Yep, absolutely.
And I think it doesn't, need to go too much farther than that.
Okay.
And like I said, if the hospitals don't have a bunch of doctors on their board, it's the same principle.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I could see maybe just because teaching is like a unique experience, I could see maybe like having like a head of teacher, like if there was like a head of teachers, having something like that where maybe they don't teach anymore, they're not in the classroom, but they were a teacher. If they were on the like some kind of school board, but maybe not like an active teacher that can pretty much raise their own pay essentially because of they're on the school board.
Yeah, that was another issue that I was going to bring up. I'm glad you hit on that because that was one of the conflicts that I found, but I'm glad you raised the other one because I didn't know about that one. So
It's hard because there could be so many
right.
perceived conflicts that it's hard once you go down that rabbit hole. Where do you stop? Because at the same time, you like in similar fashion, it's different, but it's the same. So you could have, for instance, someone who doesn't own property and pay taxes on like a town council or like a board of some sort that
select
votes
board,
for budgets and things like that. So it's very similar. It's different, of course, but it's very similar in regards to the rabbit hole that it would go down potentially.
yeah, I mean we have attorney. It escalated in SAD 75 when the union president endorsed multiple school board candidates. So now you're going from a heavy appearance of conflict, if not a conflict. So there was enough petitioning that drew a question to the school board attorneys, and they wrote sideways kind of it's not really a conflict, but they end by saying if you're ever talking about the budget, and I have this also, but if you're talking about the budget, you should declare that there may be a appearance of conflict.
Right, and you could recuse yourself.
Right.
But they haven't, and they haven't yet. Obviously, they don't want to say that on public record because it doesn't look good. But if the attorneys are requesting or advising you to do something, then we're probably not in left field crazy saying that there's a conflict.
Right. No, absolutely.
Right.
I hear you.
And even if there's not, even if there's a perceived conflict, it could still look like a conflict.
Right.
Yep. And honestly,
Which is just as bad.
Yep. And
Can be, yes.
there's not
Absolutely.
a great example going on a lot of times at the state house and the federal level either. Right? There's conflicts all over the place.
There's conflicts all over the government.
I think that's one area we could probably better look into is recusing ourselves from conflict of interest.
I mean,
'cause-
you have to either be forced to, or else you're not going to have any incentive to.
Right. No, you're right.
The same concept behind conflict, right? If we're not obligated to believe them saying, I won't allow it to influence me.
Yeah.
That's why
sometimes saying it isn't not quite enough.
No.
no. Now when you're talking, the budgets now are up there. Right? We just put
Millions of dollars.
Well,
$42 million.
you got to think. I mean, a lot of the school board budget makes up most of the city's budgets,
Or at least half of
at
it.
least half of it, if
Yep.
not
At least
if
for, I
not
think,
more.
half of it was
yeah,
water bill, right?
I believe so. I believe it. I think it was a little more than half.
The property taxes.
But-
you have a lot of people.
Not
on fixed
much
income.
more, but
So when inflation hits like it does, the interest rates are about to go up, and now you have the rising property taxes to pay for school budget. When it looks like there could be an outside firm to come in and do an audit and probably trim a lot of the fat. But again, nothing like that's going to happen as long as the board is, heavily influenced by the union, who then negotiates with the union. And that's when that's where you end up with 23% raises over 3 years.
I'm from Oakland. We lucked out in regards to the fact that there's not much of a union in that area. So a couple years ago, when all the kids went back to school for COVID, most of all of the schools locally in the area either went back like every other day, or they had like different cohorts where they had to like
yeah, Waterville had
go
the
tiered. Lawrence
tiered,
High School,
yeah.
same thing. My school district in Oakland, RSU 18, was the only school district to go back 5 days a week.
Oh,
It's awesome.
Yeah, and one of the first school boards of the year was the teachers union not liking that. And they
No, wait.
tried to stand against it.
My bad.
Luckily, we have a really good superintendent, Carl Gartley, and a really good school board, and they didn't stand for it.
Well,
They
a lot of
stayed 5 days.
a lot of that COVID money came with strings attached, and
Yeah,
a
well.
lot of people didn't really look at what was attached.
Yeah.
That's a whole.
And then it hit them, and they were like, maybe we should have looked at that.
Yeah, there's a lot of money that came
Anytime
through
there's
ESSER.
anytime there's government funds, there's
Yeah.
always strings attached.
Yep, and a lot of times they're attached to things like special ed, so they really
Yep.
leverage, you know.
Oh yeah, they know how to leverage. They know how to leverage it. That's for sure.
Yep. So
And then it's usually not at the good expense of everything. It's usually
no, and
the other way.
the ESSER and art funds was some of an issue. It didn't seem. It was explicitly stated that those funds that the school boards should be soliciting the public to find out what they want to spend the funds on.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I don't feel like that was done very well at all. There was no special meetings. In my opinion, it took a rather largely a FOIA submitted by multiple districts to get up a website that was more indicative of feedback.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but then we found programs that were bought that openly advocated that they helped curriculum. But in a lot of school administrative units, if something influences curriculum, it has to go through a curriculum committee.
right.
You know, so
Yeah, I remember there was a story last year where they tried to use some of the funds to buy gift cards for like Dunkin' Donuts for like all the
Really?
teachers or something like that.
yeah.
And they end up it wasn't good. They end up walking it back and apologizing and taking them back.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a quote. I'm sure there's, you know, at some point you have to provide a quote of what you need, and then you have it all left over, and you know, it doesn't look good either. So they're always going to try to spend what they have.
Well, see, that's another thing too. Is to meet some of those quotas, they have to spend all of the money in order to get like the next round of money too. So instead of saving money where they could, you know what I mean, they go out and spend it.
There's still lots of schools that haven't even spent it all.
No, I know, and it's
There's just so much money being printed and given
there
to
was
everybody.
there
Yeah, I
was
mean, and our biggest thing is the transparency angle of it, the option, the choice, and definitely transparency. You know, I work for a defense contractor, and every keystroke we hit and everywhere we go is recorded.
Yep.
Yep.
So when parents are advocating for, you know, more access to the classroom, it may be foreign, right, to people, but it's not
It's not
unheard
foreign
of.
to everybody else.
It's not foreign to a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, so and with technology, there's plenty of ways to do it without being right in the teacher's face and interfering.
Right, they could easily just mount a small camera that just sits, or, you know, a camera that just kind of looks angled down towards the teacher, or there's 1,000 different ways that they could go about it.
even just audio.
That would anything, a little bit of oversight, you know, helps out a lot.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it would act as.
Well, I
Accountability.
think parents got woken up when the teachers sent all the kids home, and then they actually had to like force their kids to go do the online curriculum for the rest of the year a couple years ago, and the parents hadn't really seen what they were doing for their curriculum until the parents actually got to watch some of what they were doing.
Yeah, it exposed a
On the-
lot of.
On the Zoom calls.
Yeah, well, a lot of
and
this-
Google Classroom.
a lot of it is digital now.
Yeah.
So when I'm about to turn 40, I came home with a backpack and book bag and
Right.
in my backpack.
Yep.
So at 8:00 or 9:00 at night, my parents probably walked over and looked at the books, thought it was, well, right now, that's the trigger for parents isn't there. It's all digital.
Yeah, right.
You
so
know,
they don't see it. They don't
you know.
see it to ask
Right.
about the individual stuff.
And you have two parents working a lot to pay bills.
Yeah.
So the culture's changed some, and a lot of the focus, there's a lot of details in curriculum, like as I said in the beginning, that once parents start seeing it, they understand why a lot have issues with it.
And it's hard because it's as much as we talk about the classroom, I've been part of on the other side. So I've been part of like the PTA and things like that. And it's not just the classroom, it's mostly the classroom. But also sometimes the parents aren't reaching out. They're not asking what's going on. Some of them are letting the teachers and the TVs parent their kids.
Yeah.
And that's, both of those things are very real and definitely happening. And we have to figure out a best way to
Balance it.
work through the issues so that the teachers and the parents feel listened to, because a lot of times the first line of defense is the teachers for the kids that are, because sometimes kids go home, they don't talk to their parents about what they're doing at school.
Well, see, that's another thing too. I mean, the traditional role of a teacher has changed over the last decade.
Yeah.
We talked. I think we talked about this on a podcast previous. I don't remember who
Yeah,
it
we
was
have.
with, but yeah, we talked a little bit about that. So it does go to show.
Right. So now they're a friend, they're a therapist, they're a guidance counselor.
Right, taking on more roles.
Yeah, it seems like there was a coupling of mental health with schools.
Yeah.
Which I understand why it can get that way, especially since there's so much affluence everywhere. But now you have kids walking to the school thinking about mental health.
I just
Right.
feel that
not having it in their back of their mind,
Yeah.
away from them.
I feel like on the mental health aspect too, we're as a society we're a little too quick to medicate.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to really figure out what the core issue is. But yeah, so
Well, our empowering parents is that's how one of the ones that I navigated to parents' rights and education, because it was valuing kids or kids first. We can sacrifice and we can take on risk as long as we put a bubble around kids. I thought that was kind of the social agreement that we had. It doesn't look like that exists as much during 2020.
Right.
But the next one is empowering parents, because the number one influence on a student's education is the environment at home. In terms of
Absolutely.
And just from trying to read source stuff from trying to familiarize myself more on that end of it. Parents just asking simple questions like, "Did you have a test today?" or "How'd you do on your test?"
right, communication wise,
will raise the 0% influence up
so-
lot just by asking.
Yeah,
simple questions.
and I think with the electronics that plays a little bit of the disconnect too, because we like we don't engage with one another like we should. Because I catch myself doing it. Instead of running upstairs to talk to Candace, my wife, I'll send a text message. So I definitely can see how it plays in.
Right. And
But,
kids like to emulate their parents.
Absolutely. So they see it from us, and it becomes that snowball effect again.
I
So
think that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves that the kids are doing these days is nobody talks on the friggin' phone anymore.
no,
Everyone
every
just sits there
text.
and texts themselves.
I
Maybe
try to
friends.
call more myself, but
Yeah, I mean, there's larger symptoms in whole in terms of, especially with boys, with the suicide rate so much higher than girls now. Less are going to college. Even 13 to 35, is basically an epidemic going on with ED. So there's a lot of symptoms at large showing that these long periods of times at school, there's something missing, either when they're getting home or they're getting too much of something at school. And it's just something we have to address, but it's not going to get addressed unless parents really are empowered to,
To speak about
ask,
to
yeah,
speak about
to
it.
ask. I mean,
We're not supposed to know everything, but we can ask. And
Right.
Just because you're asking a question doesn't mean you're undermining someone's authority.
Of course not.
right? It seems to be.
Transparency is like the number one thing in school.
Yeah, yeah, and then like I was saying, everybody can work better towards it. I think so. But yeah, I guess we can start winding down. You have anything in the works?
Not right now. Actually, yes. So July 22nd, 23rd, and 24th is the weekend of Oakfest
Oh, no
in
doubt.
Oakland, and we will be there for a shared studio on that Saturday, which I believe is July 23rd.
Definitely.
And we'll be doing a live podcast from there.
Oh, good deal. Maybe I'll come out and we'll do an all sides Kennebec thing too.
We'll have a vendor booth.
Just remind me. Don't let me forget.
All right.
But yeah, all I have for July is Shelly coming on.
Yeah, that should be a good chat.
Yeah, I think it will be. She's always a good chat with Shelly for sure.
Another Republican on board chatting with us.
Yes, yes. And to our Democrat friends that are out there, the olive branch is there.
Right, you just have to come on board and chat with us.
Well,
It's really not difficult.
Just show up. Hit us up. Let us know. But yeah, definitely. I want to thank Alan, and I'll let you say your last name because I'll kill it.
Sarvinas.
Sarvinas. Say, if I say it right after, I'll get it. But yes, definitely thank you for coming on to All Sides of Kennebec. I'm one of your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Jeremy.
And until next time, remember, a true